This is video 2 of the 5.6 inverse of a function. And in this video, we're going to find the inverse of a function. Okay? So, we're going to start off with some vocabulary. We need to know what that inverse of a function means. Okay? An inverse of a function are functions that undo each other. So, you'll hear me use the word inverse, and I think I just used it in the last video. To get rid of a cube, we took the inverse function when that was a cube root. Okay? It's the same thing. Same type of thing. Alright. So, we want to find the inverse function of this function, and then we want to graph both it, the function, and its inverse. Okay. So there's two methods you could do to finding the inverse. Okay, so I'm going to start with one method. Okay, so this one I'm going to do the inverse operations in reverse order. Okay, so this is method 1. You can choose which method you prefer to do when you're solving for inverse. So I'm going to show you both ways. I'm going to do one method for this problem, and I'll do a different method for number 5. And then you can pick which method you want to use. Alright, so what we do with this, with doing the inverse operations in reverse order, is I start with my function here. And I want to start closest to x. So I'll just make a little note. Whoops, so you remember that. Start closest to x. What's happening to x here? So number 1, it's being multiplied by 3. Okay? So that's the first thing. And then as I move out away from x, then it's being subtract 1. It's being 1 is being subtracted from it. Okay? And to do the inverse, this says do it in reverse order. So I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. So this becomes my number 1, but I'm going to do the inverse operation. So the inverse of subtraction is addition, so I'm actually going to add 1. The inverse of multiplying is dividing. And you still use the same number, okay? So when I write out my problem, excuse me, I'm going to say this is function, that was function f, I'm going to say this is function g. I do these steps. So I take x, step 1 says add 1. Step 2 says divide by 3. So I've got to take all of that and I'm going to divide by 3. This is my inverse function. So if I graph these two functions, I'm going to start by graphing the original function. Okay, I had a y-intercept of -1 and a slope of 3. Whoop, I didn't put that over in time. That's not there. But then that's not there. Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3. Alright. So it's a line that looks like this. Okay? Now if I graph function g, so that was function f. And if I graph function g, now remember, this can be written as 1/3 x plus 1/3. Okay? So I have a y-intercept at 1/3. I go up 1, right 3 from there. So it's kind of like that. And it'll look like this. So this is g of x. Now, a way to check that you graphed it correctly is if you graph the line y equals x. So it has a slope of 1. It's right through here. So this is y equals x. If you notice, this and this are the same distance. Okay? You draw lines perpendicular to this, they're going to meet at the same distance on both sides. So it takes your function and it reflects it over that y equals x line. Okay, so you don't have to draw that y equals x, but I wanted to show you that that's what it's reflecting over, and that's a good way to check your graph that the things are the same, just flipped over the graph. All right, let's try number 5. So this time, we're going to do a different method. So this time we'll do method 2 here. Okay, and we are going to switch x and y, then solve for y. Okay, so remember, f of x is the same thing as saying y. Okay, so it says switch x and y. So I had a y there, so I'm going to say that's x now. It equals a negative 1/3, but instead of x, I'm going to say it equals y, or that's y, and then plus 2. So I just took this x and y and I switched them. So I have this. And then it says solve for y. So there's y. I need to get it all by itself. So I'm going to subtract 2 to both sides. I get x minus 2 equals a negative 1/3 y. To get rid of the negative 1/3, if I multiply it by a negative 3, those are inverses of each other, and I'm left with y. Okay, then I have negative 3 times x and a negative 3 times 2. So there's my new equation. All right, so I'm going to start by graphing my original equation. Has a y-intercept of 2 and a slope of negative 1/3, so down 1, right 3. And it looks like this. Okay, so that's f of x. Excuse me. Then g of x has a y-intercept at 6 and a slope of negative 3 over 1. So it looks like this. That is g of x. Now again, I told you if you graph that line, y equals x, so it goes through 0, 0 with a slope of 1. Those are reflected over that line. Okay, so now go to your practice and do problems number 16 and 17, then move on to the next video.